In this video, we're going to get into the meat and the taters of the Reveno clutch. We've got this rebuild kit. We're going to pull this clutch apart. I'm going to show you what's inside, how it all works. Let's freaking do it. Let's start by the analogy. How does a Reveno clutch work? This is a variator. It has nothing to do with the clutch, but most people know what a variator is when you're dealing with scooters. And if you don't know, let me explain. So this is a variator. Imagine, well, this thing spins around with the crankshaft. And imagine these little rollers as kids on a merry-go-round, okay? Keep in mind, the fat kids are always the last ones to fall off the merry-go-round. The light kids always fling off first as it spins. So this thing's spinning. As it's spinning, you notice it's got these little ramps. See how these are starting to slide out? Well, that's what happens with centrifugal force. When you spin this, these roll out. Depending on these weights, you can choose your weights. You can choose heavier or lighter. The heavier ones are going to take longer to roll out. The lighter ones are going to roll out faster. When that happens, as it's spinning, this variator is starting to push the back of the plate out, which is pushing this forward. That's all you really need to know. That's the analogy. When this spins, there's a ramp, and these rollers roll out, just like a merry-go-round. Okay, keep that in your head because that's a lot of how the Reveno clutch works. Okay, and then here's the Reveno clutch. Remember I showed you the little roller ramp? And then the rollers, they have the same type of thing here. See these little chrome rollers? You can see them back there. As the Reveno clutch spins, underneath there, those rollers kick out. We're going to take this apart so you know exactly what I mean. When that happens, it locks these plates that spin into place. So if I pull up here, I can't spin them anymore because the rollers have rolled up that ramp and locked those into place. So the whole clutch is ran with roller weights. And it does have some springs to dampen. Here's another clutch. This is our traditional clutch. As this spins, this clutch, a lot different. This is the old technology. You have springs. If you want to, delay the clutch process, then we would do heavier springs. Because as these spin, see there's a little pivot point. This guy just pivots out. And the spring tension is how you tune the clutch. The Reveno, you tune it with the roller weights. This is dinosaur technology. Everybody knows how a drum brake works on a motorcycle, car, whatever. Imagine this as a drum brake on your wheel. Your wheel is spinning here, and when you push the brakes, the drums slide out just like that, okay? Everybody knows how disc brakes work. Imagine this being, it's kind of the opposite, but imagine this middle part being your rotor, and this being your brake pads. There's one on each side, and then they clamp together. Disc brakes clamp together. Drum brakes go out and they catch the drum. So what I'm trying to convey here is the old style drum clutch, or the old style clutch is like drum brakes. The Reveno clutch is like disc brakes. Nobody wants to run drum brakes anymore on your car, motorcycle, ATV, any of that. We run disc brakes. Old technology, standard clutch. New technology, the Reveno. We'll go further into it. Let me show you some more stuff. So the reason we're rebuilding this clutch, this is actually a very new clutch. It only has a couple miles on it, but the reason why we're rebuilding this clutch, not because the plates are worn out. It's very rare for these plates to wear out. You really have to abuse the heck out of the clutch. These, in my opinion, these are just as durable as the old style clutch. The reason why we're doing this is our Honda Ruckus clutch. It works just like a Dio. So we're basically using a Honda Dio clutch, and we replaced the weights with heavier weights from the Dio. So because a Dio is a 2-stroke engine, and they rev up really high, and a Honda Ruckus is a 4-stroke engine, and they don't rev as high. So we want the clutch to engage earlier. So this is a Dio clutch that we run on the Honda Ruckus. But let me explain how we make that happen. This is the Dio pulley, which attaches to the Honda Ruckus. You pull the complete clutch off the Honda Ruckus, and then we install this guy. So just imagine this spring went here, and I pushed this down with force, and then I screwed the nut on right there, okay? And that's what your clutch would look like. And then you've got this here as well that goes over the top, your clutch bell. So imagine you're gonna crank this down on your Ruckus. You're gonna have a nut right here that attaches to your transmission shaft that goes through here, okay? And then we've got a little spacer that we run. This has nothing to do with how to rebuild. I'm just trying to tell you what happened to this clutch, okay? Put our spacer on, we slide this clutch on, and then we crank this down, this nut down to hold the clutch in place. Well, what happens, if I take this back apart, if you notice, there is no bearings back there. If you crank this nut down, it was on there, so hard, see that little piece there? You're gonna push on the bearings, and those bearings are gonna push out right out the back. So you wanna be very careful when you're tightening these down. You don't want to over torque them. So use the proper torque setting. It's really easy to do because impact wrenches nowadays are super, super powerful, and it's easy to do. So that's what happened. If you notice, the bell came down on top of the clutch right there. You see that? This is probably fine. This is probably fine. We're gonna take it apart and see, but we're getting some really funky noises. Screeching noises like chalkboard in there. So we're gonna go ahead and rebuild this clutch, and not to mention right there, plates are all beat up. We'll get a better view on that here in just a minute, but that's the reason why we're replacing this sucker. Inside the clutch, this is the meat and potatoes, pretty much. This is our rebuild kit. It comes with the springs and all the friction plates. These are friction plates, 2 friction plates. And then you've got your pressure plates here, steel plates. I'm going to show you how all this goes together, but in order to open up this clutch, we're going to flip this over. See all these little Allens? We're going to open that up. This can be a little tricky, and I'm going to show you guys exactly how to rebuild a clutch. And in the meanwhile, we'll show you how all this works. I kind of explained it, but once you see it, you'll understand it. Okay, here's our Reveno clutch. We got to make sure we get this little tamper-proof little sticker off. Okay. Just enough to get the bolt off. And what we're going to do is we're going to loosen each one by one in a star pattern, because we want to loosen it evenly. Okay, once you get them all loose, let's pull these out one by one. All right, now that they're all out, you want to squeeze this clutch down like this and flip it over. Okay, now I can pull this off very easily. There it is. That plate got a little bit beat up. See that? That's why we're doing the rebuild. But this billet piece is nice, other than the little scratch there. So here's our little tuning springs. They're barely on there. They're on these little nipples that are on the clutch plate, and I'll show you how those go on. It's a lot more tedious putting it back together than it is taking it apart. We're just going to take these out. So here is our old springs. We're not going to use those, so I'm going to set them aside. We're also not going to use the bolts that we pulled out. So as I take this apart, so if you notice, I pulled this guy off like this. I'm going to put it like that over there, and then I'll take this one, put it like that, and then I'll take this, put it on there. We're taking this apart so we don't forget how it comes apart, and I'm just flipping it over and putting it on there. See how that goes? Those are the little nipples where the spring goes on and sits, okay? And then we finally take this off. So going back to our variator, remember these spin? As they spin, these rollers roll out. Now how does that compare to a Reveno clutch? Same way, as this spins, these roll out. Much, much more aggressive ramp, but if you notice, they roll out. You see that? So we tune this clutch the same way that you're going to tune a variator. You can change out your different rollers, like for instance these are 21 gram rollers, but a Dio has 18 gram rollers. So we've got all kinds of different sizes to choose from. The other thing is remember we were dealing with those springs. We also have got all kinds of different springs. We've got like our 3,500 RPM spring, 1,000 RPM spring, 1,500. And you notice the springs, all the different RPMs are a different anodized color. Like those are red, these are purple, so you don't get confused. So going back to like how does this compare to disc brakes? These rollers are what's going to engage your disc brakes. How are they going to clamp together? Well, this plate here, see it's got the little tang for the spring, that's going to go there. See, I'm just going to do this like halfway so you kind of know how it works. So we'll do like just 4 springs like that. And then you've got another plate with the same thing. So I set this on here really nicely. So I just put the bottom plate and the top plate on there with a few springs, and then you've got the rollers. So just imagine this bottom plate and this top plate being your brake pads. In the middle, there's no rotor in there as if it was brake pads, but this would be like your rotor. So imagine these being in there. I didn't want to put it in because it's too tight, which is, you know, your pressure plate and your friction plate, just like that, stacked. So when those rollers roll out, it's going to push these up. When it pushes these up, this is bolted down, okay? It's going to squeeze these together, these plates. Oops, super delicate. But that's the way that it works, like disc brakes. Look at all the surface area. You got this whole side on that friction plate, this whole side on this friction plate. There's much more contact than your standard drum brake where you have right here. So it's going to grip better, and this is the biggest thing you'll notice with these clutches is they grip much, much better. So that's how that works, and then these springs are going to supply the cushion. So you got these rollers that roll out, and these springs will dampen the aggressiveness. Instead of like popping the clutch on your motorcycle and doing a wheelie every time, this will slow the process down a little bit. And you can adjust those, of course, with the different springs that I showed you. But that's the way that works. I hope you understand. I tried to describe it in the best way that I could. If you know how disc brakes work and you know how variators work, you'll understand how this works. These things really don't wear out. I've had a Reveno clutch in my 232, which is the Mac Daddy of them all, biggest CC in a GY6, abusing it, and I haven't burned up a clutch. It's very, very difficult to burn these clutches up, but it's easy to damage them when you put them together. So I kind of wanted to go through and show you guys what's all entailed. Everything's really nice billet aluminum. You can take these rollers out. Everything's very, very nice and replaceable. So it's not a throwaway clutch by any means. Okay, now we're going to install this rebuild kit, and we put everything onto this plate the way that it came off so there's no confusion. And I'm going to have you do the same way. Even though I know how to do it by heart, I want you to do it this way. So the first thing I'm going to pull off of here is this plate. Okay? It's going to be that plate, which means it's going to go down like that since we're pulling it off and putting it on there like that. So there's 2 identical plates just like that in the rebuild kit. So we got that one. All right. Next one we're going to pull off is a friction plate. There's 2 identical ones that are symmetrical. So we're just going to put them on like that. See these gaps here? They've got the holes. The screws are going to go through there. There's 2 ways to look at it when you're putting this plate on. This little nipple lines up with right in front of the roller. See that little step? Or this cutout right there is in front of the hole. So let's line these up. And I'll put this guy back on. Again, this is symmetrical. Okay, we're going to pull this guy off. Doesn't have the nipples on there, it's just got the normal shape. We'll put that aside. And we're going to take the new one and we're going to match these up. Let me show you. You want to line these up so that the spring can fit right in there. These little teeth aren't in the way. Kind of looks like it's off-centered because of the camera angle, but that's what we want. That's a little bit off, so we'll just twist it. You want to get those things straightened out, just like that. Okay, and the last one, that's got the little nipple on there. We're actually just going to put it back on here. So we're not going to put it on the rack like that, because we'll have a spring on there, on that nipple, and a spring on this nipple. So you don't want to put it on until we put the spring on. So this is just going to go, the new one, just going to go right on to the old billet plate there. Okay, and then just pull this off for now, because we're going to use this as a way to line up the plates. So you're just going to kind of put it in there. You want it to, you'll move it around. It's a little tedious. See, we've got it in there. It's a little tedious, but we've got it in there. Everything's lined up. So I can pull that back off of there slowly. And then we could put our little plate back on. Okay, finally we got our little springs. They're going to go on each little nipple, and this is going to be super tedious. You're going to have a lot of patience to do this. It's kind of like that game Operation when you're a kid. If you mess up, it's going to buzz, or the whole, like, every spring's going to fall out of there, and then you have to do it over again. So you got to have a steady hand. Try not moving the plates at all. Okay, got them all on there. Remember our plate on here, we're going to pull it back off. All of those little nipples are going to line up. You could use a screwdriver to give you a little help. Before we put this last piece over the top, we've got these little square cutouts. See that? There's one there. And they're not symmetrical. You skip one, there's one there, skip one. So the same thing's going on in there. So when I put this down, I want to take note of where that little square is, and same thing in here. So I know that the cutout is here and that cutout is there, so I can do this very, very easy without knocking the spring, the whole springs over and everything else. There we go. So it's sitting there really nice. The next thing we're going to do is apply pressure down, get it to the edge of a table, flip it over. So here is the complete clutch, just barely sitting there. If I lift it up, everything's just going to crumble out. Now all that's left is to compress that down and put these screws in. These are new screws. All of our old stuff's right over here. So we're going to use a little Loctite on the screws. I use blue Loctite. And then we're going to basically apply pressure down and get some of these started. Just have to be very, very careful not to crumble this. Just a little bit of Loctite. Goes a long ways. That's actually too much. If you get too much on there, it's pretty easy. You can just take another one and just dance it around. And I could slowly put these in there as I get them set up. We're going to do this in a cross pattern, of course. Okay, so now I'm going to just push down on this and get some of them started. Get one started, you can normally get the other one started. You just want to go a little bit each time. So I got 3 of them started. We're pretty much home free now. You always want to do this by hand. You don't want to put any torque on it, because if you strip this, you're in trouble. So now I've got all of them started. And I'm going to go just like one turn at a time. There's one, then it'll bounce over to the other side. We're doing this in a cross pattern. Once you get the first 2, the other 2 are going to be easier, but don't let that change your process. You're literally doing a star pattern the whole time until they're all tight. Once you get them all tightened, you can go back around the horn. This is just a snug fit. So if you look in there, you can kind of see. You can kind of see this, this little step down. You want to make sure all of that's go around. Make sure the gap is the same all the way around. It didn't like kink or anything like that. I know it's pretty difficult to see. It's kind of dark in there, but I think you get the picture. And there is our freshly rebuilt Reveno clutch. So you line these things up, these guys up, little pressure plates, and then you can slide your clutch bell on. So there she is. The Reveno clutch rebuilt in perfect form. And then here's all of our old plates. We won't need that. And of course, all of our springs and old bolts. You don't want to reuse those either. Back to our old clutch bell. There's no bearings in it. This is the way it's supposed to look when it's new. So what I was explaining is it's easy to press those bearings out if you crank it down too far. It should look just like that. There's the difference. Whenever you install these on it doesn't matter what kind of model you have, you want to make sure that this sucker is down like that. Okay. You put your spring on here like that. Well, let me remove this. Put your spring on, Every Reveno clutch is going to come with one of these. It goes behind here, just like that. That goes on top of here. And we're going to put, see the little shape there? Same shape as there. I'm going to put a bunch of pressure. I'm going to squeeze this down. I usually do it with my feet, and then once I get it on, I tighten that nut down. And of course on the threads, do a little red Loctite. Don't need a lot. Okay? Because you don't want that sucker coming loose. I normally just use an impact to crank that down. We've got these sockets on the website. It's got one size on the other, and the other side it's got another size. A 39 and a 41. So that just goes on to there. Actually, it's the wrong size. That's a 39. But I will always put like a microfiber over the top. Kind of line it up because I don't want to mess this thing up. And then let me get it in there really quick. It's like that. There we go. You can pull the microfiber off and you've got your clutch ready to go, and you always want to squeeze it, make sure it's good. Just like that. And we're ready to rock. There's our Reveno clutch, ready to go. That's how to rebuild it. Hope you guys learned something. Appreciate you. See you in the next video.